Welcome to the Teaching Journeys podcast, hosted by Dave Roberts. Humanity possesses a unique skill, the ability to pass knowledge from one generation to the next. This podcast embraces that ability, offering learning opportunities through conversations with extraordinary guests. Dave aims to leave a positive mark on individuals around the world. So before you dive into today's episode, please share this podcast with your network, including friends, family, and colleagues. And please consider leaving a rating or review. Your support makes all the difference.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Teaching Journeys podcast. I'm your host, Dave Roberts, and today it is my pleasure to have as my guest Amrita Mukherjee. Amrita is a TEDx speaker, an ICF ACC executive coach, author, and seasoned industrial leader with nearly 20 years of leadership experience in Goldman Sachs and Wells Fargo. She is recognized for her expertise in AI-driven leadership, strategic communication, building remote and diverse teams, and strengthening employee engagement in today's disconnected workplace. Known for her blend of data-driven insights, storytelling, and actionable strategies, Amrita equips leaders to build inclusive cultures that drive innovation and business performance. She has spoken at colleges, global forums, corporate events, and leadership summits across diverse sectors. As the founder of the Shevolution, Amrita is committed to empowering women through coaching, mentoring, and community building. She has delivered impactful workshops for corporate leaders, universities, and schools, including programs designed to inspire confidence, communication, and leadership in teenage girls. Her advocacy extends to girls' education and menstrual health awareness, supporting campaigns such as Pad for Freedom. Amrita, welcome to the Teaching Journeys podcast. It is a pleasure having you on the program today.
Thank you so much for having me, Dave. I'm really excited and looking forward to our conversation.
And I think you might be my first guest from India.
Well, so that makes me feel even more special.
And we have to credit, I think, one of my favorite people and podcast host, Candace Snyder, the host of Passion, Purpose, and Possibilities. Candace has been very supportive of the Teaching Journeys podcast, been supportive of me personally. She's a great friend, a great podcast host, and she always recommends really stellar guest contributors. And I'm confident we're going to have a great conversation today.
I'm looking forward to it. Candace is an amazing human, and I am really happy to have a friend on the other side of the globe in Candace. So, initial feeling.
Yeah, she's great. And hopefully after we're done with this, you'll have two friends on the other side of the globe. So,
Of course. Looking forward.
Me too. Anyway, Amrita, my first question for you is tell our audience about the major experiences that have shaped your life path and your life passions today.
I believe my life's passion and purpose has been shaped by a diverse set of experiences, starting from experiences or challenges that I had as a young kid, what I observed in family, extended family, going all the way to the kind of education I went for, the leadership experiences that I have in these global organizations have taught me. But some of the profound learning came from personal moments. One of them were obviously when I was recovering from an accident, when I experienced a burn injury and I had to stay in the hospital for months. And the overall recovery actually took years. It was definitely painful, but I think what I learned in those moments, in those days, I'm ever grateful for those reflections and realizations. And also losing somebody who's very close in the family, my sister, those experiences taught us about the importance of relationship, value that we have in people, and how we want to live our life with intention every day. It's not about just going for one goal or one thing and achieving. It's not a checklist. It's beyond that. That's where the purpose and the passion came from. So I would say it's a culmination of all of this coming together and shaping the person I am today. Because if I take out any one, it's like missing one big ingredient, I would say, from the dish. So, yeah, I wouldn't really take out anything or trade anything. So, I have no moment saying, no, I shouldn't have done that. That was really bad or anything. I consider each and every one of them as experience, an opportunity for learning and growth.
Yeah, I think everything that happens to us, whether it's good or bad, has something to teach us. We've
Absolutely.
learned more from the challenges than I think we do from the good events. And with you losing a sibling, with your sister, and my condolences for your loss, by the way. And that kind of alters the natural laws of the universe. I mean, you're not supposed to. Your siblings are supposed to. You're supposed to grow old together. You're supposed to share kids together. Life doesn't prepare you for, burying a sibling or for a parent to bury a child. It's just that you can read all the textbooks in the world. You can, talk to all the therapists in the world, and there's just you. It's something that you have to learn as you go, and you have to kind of find your own way using whatever resources are available to you or that you choose to use. So, but yeah, I think our personal experiences, I think, ultimately shape what we do professionally, and
Yep.
and what we do professionally, I think, continues to evolve as we get more experiences, and we experience more challenge, and we're constantly a work in progress, Amrita.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, I know when you're a professional, you started out in engineering and software. Am I correct?
That is right. Yes.
So you made a very interesting career switch or transition from engineering and software to coaching and mentoring. So tell us about the circumstances that led to that switch and what skills from your previous career have served you well in the coaching and mentoring space.
Yeah, absolutely. And first thing I would say is, as you mentioned, we evolve, not so much. I won't really see this a switch as such. Then I would see it as evolution, right? And even during my engineering and leadership days, I always found myself getting interested in solving problem. And it can be a technical problem, a functional or a business problem, or a conflicting people situation, a difficult conversation, especially when we are pitching an idea, when we are suggesting some change, when we are protecting our team and saying, we are not going to do this, do that. There are a lot of differences in opinion, and which is absolutely okay. But many a times, what happens is it is people's ego that's associated with that decision. It's not so much the decision itself. So when we learn how to navigate and go beyond someone's ego and really think and talk and influence with objective purpose, that becomes very helpful. And that definitely comes in handy when I am working in this new space for last couple of years. One other skill I would say was listening itself, right? Listening is extremely critical in coaching. And also, as a leader, I think listening is not only important to understand the other person, but also important for gaining trust. Not once, not twice, with small bits each and every day. Being an engineer, and interestingly enough, I'm an applied electronics engineer by education, but I've never really worked in the field or in the space of electronics. I have worked in software, and that too, I have built software for finance, right? So it's not really just building code, it's going and understanding the business. So it has been a very interesting and growth oriented journey, I would say. So in that space, I would say system thinking, right? Which we talk about in engineering, right? System thinking. So when I think about coaching, I see it as looking for patterns. looking for a root cause, not staying on the surface. Because many a times what people are dealing or struggling with, they themselves are not aware of it. And that is what we discover when we have coaching conversation. And that's very gratifying when we find that moment. As a coach, I think those are our moments of success, right? The moment where our clients actually find what's really blocking them. And also, I would say structured problem solving, because coaching is not about giving generic advice, because each and every human is very unique, very different. They're, even if the challenge on the surface looks very similar, their upbringing, their cultural background, their preferences and values are different, and hence the solution needs to be very different as well. So understanding that and addressing those as we go is also something I would say is very similar. So the industry and the operating style is different, but the intent and the purpose are quite similar in
Yeah.
nature. And the skills are definitely complementary, right? What I learned in my leadership experiences are coming handy here. And what I learned as a coach helps me become a better leader.
And the three things, Amrita, that stuck out is one is the skill of listening. And we need to be good listeners before we can be effective problem solvers. The other thing is that the person that you're listening to, that may be the first time they've ever been given the courtesy of being listened to in the first place. They may have been talked at. They may have been told that this is what you need to do without really soliciting their input. The other thing, and you mentioned systems, and you mentioned that in terms of engineering, in terms of studying systems. And, we talk about in therapy systems theory, where,
Yeah.
we take a look at not the individual within that system, but the system itself. Because like in the workplace, and this, we
Yeah.
bring in influences from home, from our families, all of that. Those systems impact on what we do in the workplace. So if we can get an understanding of that, help individuals kind of manage that or even compartmentalize that, you know, we're allowing them to be more effective in whatever it is they're doing, in their professions. So, yeah, so those two things resonated with me immediately.
I'm glad to hear that. I mean, definitely, as you said, right, we are one human. We can put ourselves in a personal setup or a professional setup. We are the same individual. It's the background that we have, the feelings that we are feeling internally at that moment. The combination of those two creates our behavioral responses and reactions. More intentional we are with those, the more aligned they are going to be with our purpose.
Absolutely. The other thing that just occurred to me when you're listening, and particularly you had mentioned earlier, individuals come in with very, very diverse perspectives where there's going to be a lot of disagreement, a lot of head clashing.
Yep.
I think if we establish ourselves as listeners, we can fully understand the differences, yet find some similarities and see if we can help individuals towards consensus, which is the toughest type of decision making to engage in, only because it requires many rounds of compromise and give and take. But once consensus decision making is achieved, and correct me if I'm wrong, that tends to be more longer lasting and I think helps organizations sustain their mission more effectively over time.
Absolutely, 100%. And because I'm looking at it from the lens of solving a technical problem or a functional problem as well. When people are really together, not because they are forced into a team, but they're together because they believe in each other's ideas and mission, the solving the technical problem becomes way more easier
Yeah.
when there is no human challenge to be dealt with. So yeah, absolutely.
Or when we spread the message that consensus decision making means we're all in this together and we are all vested in helping the organization meet its mission.
That is true. Yeah, 100%.
Now, I found this on your LinkedIn profile. I'm not going to read this to you verbatim. I work with corporate leaders, senior managers, and leadership teams to help them perform and influence at higher levels by blending emotional intelligence, leadership communication, and executive presence with real world leadership insight. So tell me and our audience, how do those components in combination specifically work?
Yeah. So, emotional intelligence, leadership communication, and executive presence, I do not necessarily see them as independent skills. I see them interconnected because it's emotional intelligence which helps us understand our own self and also the people around us, right? The leadership communication helps us state something with clarity and confidence at the same time. And executive presence is something which people would feel even before we start speaking and long after we start. So I believe when these three work together, that is when leaders can spark inspired actions. I'll give you an example. Let's say if a leader needs to deliver a very difficult feedback to somebody, and especially there are cultural nuances involved, there may be a difference in expectation from a seniority and etc. If we omit emotional intelligence, that then we might totally miss how the other person is feeling at the moment, right? And without a clear leadership communication, we will end up confusing the person instead of inspiring them,
Yes.
right? And it's the executive presence, even in that moment, right? It is not to come across as authoritative, rather come across as invested in that conversation. So these team needs to really work together for any leader to create the kind of impact that they want to create. And it is not because people want to communicate bad intentionally, right? It is just that they are not aware of it. Sometimes they don't really know which energy they're bringing in the conversation. And even with the best intention in mind, they end up communicating it in a way which is then perceived as too harsh or too critical. So, yeah.
The power of presence has been documented in a variety of different settings, but you're right. Presence is about presenting yourself in an authoritative way. It's taking an interest. For me, the extension of providing presence would be to provide resources that are going to help your organizational teams or help individuals within that organization succeed. And also, let's throw in a little heart-centered leadership and take a look at the humanitarian side of leadership, because
Yeah.
I think that is important is as important as ensuring the bottom line as any processes you have in place to do that. And I think when people feel heard, they're going to stick around longer, and it's going to be more cost effective for companies in the long run. And again, just with the power of presence.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, with your clients that you work with, what is the framework for emotional intelligence that you use? And from your perspective, how pervasive is the absence of emotional intelligence in the workplace and society in general?
So the first one is the framework, right? So there are multiple frameworks available, but the one that I have found really, really useful with all my clients is the EQI 2.0 framework by Dr. Steven Stein, which was developed by Multi Health Systems. It has 5 components. The first is self awareness, like understanding who we really are, our self regarding, and then self expression, being able to articulate what we want with clarity and confidence, not arrogance, not confusion, but being very objective about it. And third is interpersonal. How do we connect with other people, right? The respect, understanding, and listening, the cultural nuances, building relationship, and in today's world, building relationship not only live, but through phone calls, the digital connection on social media and everything. And next is decision making. So when we are deciding something, how well do we balance logic and data?
Yeah.
And last but definitely not the least is stress management. When there are difficult moments, what's our coping mechanism? How do we respond to situations? How do we kind of come out from those moments and stay composed and stay focused on still what is our intention and purpose in life. So these are the 5 components in that framework as I work with my clients. So these are each area we focus on. For some, it's more about introspection and looking and reflection on looking inside. For some, it is more outward, really building that relationship or managing stress. I strongly feel that it's the absence of emotional intelligence in the workplace is causing way more conflicts, right? Which could have been managed. You mentioned trust earlier, right? I think trust is so essential. And many a times what happens when there is a problem, when there is a major issue in an organization, the leader will come and say, oh, we decided this and you got to trust me. Unfortunately, that's not how you can get trust or gain trust, right? It needs to be daily actions, right? Knowing your people and being there and listening to them on a more ongoing basis will earn those incremental trust points, which eventually, on those bad days or critical days, the leaders don't even have to say that you have to trust me. People will anyway rally behind because they know that this person is just knows us and is doing whatever he or she is doing is the right thing for us and for the organization. And even in a personal space, I feel many a time the intention of the conversation and the actual conversation becomes different because of the lack of emotional intelligence. And I use this example in with many of my clients. Let's say you want to convince your partner or your teenage boy for something or boy or girl for something. And when you do that and how you do that, all of that would need the emotional intelligence. Like let's say they just come back from work or from school and they had a bad conversation with their best friend and colleague and whatnot. That's not the right time, right? And just understanding that itself is important because it's way more than what we say than how and when we say something. So that's the importance of EI I see in a personal space as well, along with the professional space.
You mentioned a supervisor coming in and saying, well, we got this problem, we have to do this. And immediately I started cringing because what that does is it does not invite input. It does not invite collaboration. Let's say after he says this, that this is what we need to do. Well, now we're going to develop an organizational team to discuss the problem. Well, the organizational team isn't going to take a look at consensus decision making. We're going to look at, well, this is what the leader said he wants done. So we better
Yeah.
make sure we give him something or her something or them something
Yep.
that's going to satisfy their own agenda. And what that leads to is groupthink, where basically you're not looking at consensus decision making. You're just looking at making a decision that is going to appease, your leader without taking a look at all aspects of the decision and where that decision can go wrong.
Exactly. And those might lead to problems afterwards because people are not invested and they do not feel psychologically safe to speak up. They might just hide certain points. Like, even if they feel that, you know what, this might not work, they would be hesitant to speak up because, oh, what would be the penalty of speaking up? And the very moment somebody is thinking about that, that means they're hiding information, which can be very expensive for the company from a risk management perspective. So encouraging people to speak up is not only beneficial for getting the projects or initiatives delivered, it is important to keeping the organization safe from a risk and governance perspective.
Having the ability to speak up without penalty, without repercussion, needs to be, I think, a norm in every organization, regardless of what their mission is, regardless of the products that they're selling, and also in our personal space, too. I think we need to have that with each other because we bring our respective histories from our families, good and bad, into a relationship. And if one partner comes from a family where feelings were squashed, where, conversation wasn't encouraged, dissent wasn't encouraged, disagreement wasn't encouraged, they're going to bring that very passive stance into any relationship. So that pattern has to be broken almost immediately. And by setting a norm that's going to allow both partners to be able to listen to each other, to respond to each other's needs without worrying about, any repercussion or hurt feelings or things of that nature.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Once again, I wouldn't change a thing that you said, right? It's so important, both in personal and professional space. So,
Now, we're going to shift focus for a little bit. So I want you to talk about storytelling. And I know you've written fiction books. So talk about storytelling, how it aligns with your choice to write fiction, and your exploration of the journey of women from diverse backgrounds seeking their true identity and purpose.
sure. It's one of my favorite topics. Storytelling, I think, is very important in every conversation. I do not feel that it is only a author's job to tell a story. We all tell stories. In fact, stories is something that connects generations. It's the stories that have heard from my grandparents and the stories I'm telling to my kids and hopefully be telling to my grandkids one day would connect us. So in the capacity of a speaker, when we talk, I think of two aspects, data and story. Because data speaks to the mind, the brain,
Yep.
and the story connects with the heart. So when we get those two together, that's where the real impact happens. Because if we just tell data, just information, many a time in a corporate space, we say, oh, this person is right brain or less brain, and you have to do this or that. I think a balance is critical for a leader instead of just going one way or the other way. And so that's what I have found when I have delivered speeches or keynotes as well, that when I blend both of them, that's when the real success and the connection happens. Coming to my books, and I purposefully chose to write fiction novels. In fact, I got a lot of suggestion that being an executive coach, you should be writing a book on leadership and maybe give some tips and suggestions and frameworks and whatnot. I felt, yeah, I mean, I'm not undermining the importance of such books. There are many good books. In fact, I have used quite a few of them myself. But the reason I felt fiction would be great is because it will talk to the heart of the reader. Right. And my second book, where I have essentially two women, one is an American expat living in India who's a senior executive in a company, in a global company, and the other woman is an Indian homemaker who's giving her heart and soul to raising kids and building a wonderful home. How they come together, become friends, and how they actually explore and find they're more similar than they are different. As human, most of the time we are looking for very similar things in
Mhm.
lives. It's only on the surface that we look different, or maybe some cultural specifications are different, our country specifications are different. But in the heart, we are looking for the same kind of emotion and fulfillment. So it essentially talks about their journey and how they see a reflection of themselves through their friends and find the identity they were craving for. So yeah, that was the story.
And I'll make sure the links to your books, they get included in the episode notes before we go
Great.
live. Um, yeah, storytelling, I'm a big advocate for storytelling. I know there are many cultures, the traditions from one generation to one generation are passed down through stories. The Native American cultures are one. I don't believe they have a written account of their history. Everything, their history has all been passed down orally, along with their traditions from generation to generation. And stories are who we are. The stories make us. That's the narrative that we've crafted due to our own experiences or due to those challenges. It's important to understand that story. And I think it's another way that we can foster trust. And if somebody trusts me with their story, and I'm sure you feel the same way with us, Amrita, it's a very intimate part of their lives that they're trusting us with. And I take that very seriously. And I honor the fact that they have trusted me with a very intimate part of their life.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's like giving respect, right? That okay, only the people you truly respect would you share that intimate part of your life. And it gives relatability, right? It
Yep.
connects us immediately that okay, this is me. This is someone I know. Yeah, so yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and the other thing too, with especially when you're talking about individuals who are dealing with challenges, if you're there for the long haul with them and you see them in the throes of crisis, and then you see them break through that and come out on
Yeah.
the other side and re-engage in life with meaning and with purpose in spite of what's happened, and the fact that we were able to witness that all started with the fact that we were willing to sit down and listen to their story, including that part of that story that represented their worst crisis, their worst pain, and we were able to sit with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I understand you have the Thriving Women's Tribe. Am I correct?
Yes, I do.
So tell our audience about how that all evolved and the resources and services that you provide.
So during my corporate days, what I did observe that there are a lot of really, really talented women, and I have to be admitting that I'm really grateful for the opportunities that I've got to work with people all the way, I say, from Tokyo to San Francisco, so all across the globe. And though there are a lot of differences, there are similar challenges. And each one of us are trying to solve that alone. Sometimes struggling with it, sometimes giving up and saying, you know what, it's not meant for me. So I did see an opportunity to come together and just sometimes it is not really providing solution. Sometimes it's just being there. Sometimes it's just listening. And sometimes it's just connecting that, okay, you know what, you are looking for this and she's looking for that, and you two would be great together. You do not need to necessarily be part of that conversation. But when that happens, that's really, really powerful because I feel one individual, one person can only do so much. But when a community comes together, there is a lot of powerful transformation that can take place within. Right. And apart from the community, I feel there are some basics, tool sets or skill set that can be useful for women. And when I started, I was really thinking about women engineers like me. Many a time, engineers would hide behind their screen and their machinery, and prefer not to really interact and talk. So how to become comfortable doing something like that? How to negotiate unapologetically? How to be founding confident in difficult situations without losing your calm and all of that. So we do coaching, mentoring, and there are some resources that's available on the application once they're part of the community. Also, opportunity to connect internally, connect with me when they are dealing with a specific scenario. So all of these are part of Thriving Women's Tribe, which is above and beyond what I do as an independent coach or a speaker. So yeah, I feel deeply connected with this cause. So I doesn't matter it's 10 member, 20 member, or 150 member. I think the the passion and the interest and investment in each
Yes.
other what makes it different.
Yeah, we're always stronger together than we are separately. And it's communities of support that help us get through challenges, help us grow personally, help us grow professionally. That's why they have peer supervision in the workplace, because that's all part of community. And
True, true. Yeah.
and we need that if we're going to thrive and and just going to continue to make an impact on the world. So I'm glad that you have what you have with the Thriving Women's Tribe, and I'm glad you provide that service to women.
Thank you.
The other thing you mentioned about we don't offer solutions, and there really aren't solutions to too many things. I mean, unless you're doing solution focused therapy and it's a problem that, that may lend itself to that. But for the most part, there's not solutions to a lot of life challenges or a lot of our dilemmas. But certainly there are alternatives that we can explore. And I think if we, like you said, let's get these two individuals together and see what happens. Let's see what type of resources that can share that could be mutually beneficial. The other thing you mentioned earlier about advice, I tell my students, I don't give advice. If you follow my advice and it works, you're going to give me credit because my advice worked. If I give you advice and it doesn't work out as planned, then you're going to blame me. And so either way, there's no empowerment. You're not empowering yourself. And then the other part, if it doesn't work, like I said, you got me to blame. And
Yeah.
you're going to stay stuck in the muck longer as long as you have me to blame. And that's just going to keep you from progressing and achieving your goals. So I always make suggestions, Amrita. I never give advice.
Well, I am a strong believer of that, Dave, and I'm so glad that you mentioned that and you believe in that, because I think the first step towards achieving whatever we want to achieve in life is taking complete 100% accountability of something, not blaming anyone. It's the partner you choose to be with throughout your life. It's a job you pick. It's the profession. Doesn't matter. But you take 100% responsibility. Do not blame your parents. Do not blame your partners or friends or anyone for that matter. So I so believe in what you just said, and I want to live by that and set an example for others if I can.
Well, judging by the work you've done, by the work you're doing, I think you're going to be a good example for a lot of individuals who are going to be fortunate enough to have to cross your path.
Well, thank you. It means a lot. Thank you.
You're welcome. Now, I'm going to ask you a question that's totally unrelated to anything that we've talked about, but it's going to be a fun question. Tell me from your perspective what the perfect day for you would be.
Okay. So a perfect day would be where I wake up without an alarm to start with. That's I do not like anyone waking me up. So I wake up whenever I want to wake up. It's 5 in the morning, 7, doesn't matter. I wake up on my own. So I love that. And then I enjoy my tea in the morning without interruptions. So that these two are very important to get my day started. And then after that, I think I would love some very lively conversation like the one we are having right now. And during the day, get to meet new people, get to work with people, and have solved some problems. And irrespective of the nature of the problem, like as a kid, I used to help my grandmom when she used to do a lot of knitting. And when her wool is like all messy, I was the one who used to help, and I loved that experience. So I think I still like it. So I would like to get engaged in some kind of problem solving activity, either with my team or family member, with friends, doesn't matter, something like that. And have some energizing physical activity, either walking, running, going to the gym, something like that. And a slow evening, right? Not too full calendar, maybe, and just have time to sit and eat dinner with, have some really meaningful conversation, exchange ideas about the day, like what happened, what we enjoyed, what we liked, didn't like, and express my gratitude for the day and go to bed. So that'd be wonderful.
That sounds like a perfect day in anybody's book. So thank you for that, Amrita.
Sure.
Now, one of my last questions for you, if you're going to leave our audience with one takeaway, one thing that you want them to remember from this conversation today, what would that be?
Live with intention each and every day, each and every action. Because when we are clear on what we want to leave behind, how do we want to be remembered, and we align our actions with our intention, we naturally becomes the person we like. So that's what I will do.
Yeah, it's one thing to state our intention. It's the other thing to make sure our behavior is aligned with that. That to me is the key to manifest the the dreams that you want to have and the future that you want to have. So, and the present that you want to have.
Exactly. 100%.
Now, my last question for you is if people want to get in touch with you, find out more about your services, purchase your books, retain you as a speaker for their organizations, what is the best way for them to do that?
I'd say LinkedIn is the best place where I'm generally sharing like blogs about my work, what I'm doing, my thoughts and ideas, and I am generally active. So that would be a good place to start. They can also connect with me on my website, which is thrivingwomenstrive.com, and explore more about what we do in the community or in the coaching services. I always love some inspiring conversation. So yeah, I would recommend all the listeners to stop by and say hello.
And I will make sure all of your contact information gets in the episode notes before we go live. So, Amrita, thank you so much for just a wonderful conversation today. I truly enjoyed it, and maybe we can do this again in the future sometime.
That would be amazing. I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation, Dave. Thanks for having me here.
You're welcome. And with that, that's a wrap on another episode of the Teaching Journeys podcast. I'm your host, Dave Roberts, wishing you peace.